Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our sparkling wine webinar. My name is Enartis USA, and today we are going to talk about sparkling wine, the different method of production, the challenges and winemaking solution associated with sparkling wine, with a focus on the bubbles, since it is one of the most crucial attributes for sparkling wine. So before we start, I would like to go over some organization points. So please use the chat box number 2 that you can see highlighted here to address any connectivity or audio issue. This webinar is going to be recorded, so there is a recording in progress. And if you can keep your question for the end of the webinar, it would be great. So we will have a Q&A portion where I will answer all your questions. As well, there is some documents that can be downloadable in this highlighted section. So while I was preparing this webinar, I was actually doing some research to make sure I was up to date, and I found some fun facts on sparkling wine that I wanted to share with you. First one is that in USA, sparkling wine are not just a trend. Sparkling wine consumption has been increasing continuously for 17 years. With reaching a number in 2016 of 2 million hectoliters that American consumed, which represents 6.5% of the total wine consumption. So it's not just a trend, it's actually, there is a real interest and enthusiasm from the consumer, which means as well there is higher expectation for quality. Then, as you know, sparkling wine has some bubbles and some pressure. This pressure is sometimes can be even dangerous. So be careful when you open a bottle of sparkling wine. The longest flight we recorded for a sparkling wine cork was 177 feet, 54 meters, so pretty far, and at a speed of 25 miles per hour. So be careful. Then to finish on an encouraging note, apparently 1 to 3 glasses of champagne each week could prevent memory loss. So this study has been done in France, and it's a very encouraging study that could explain why the consumption is so high. So now that we know why, we all know why we drink sparkling wine, let's go on and see how we make sparkling wine and how we make it good. So there is different processes to make sparkling wine. So I'm going to detail, I'm going to go through all of them. So carbonation methods, you have a base wine, you first carbonate this base wine, and you fill and cork the bottle. This method is becoming more and more popular, especially with wine in can becoming bigger and bigger. There is a lot of wine in can that are actually made sparkling now. Another method, which is ancestral method, method used as well for the pet-nat. It is most likely the first method developed to make sparkling wine, and probably happened by mistake when somebody bottled a sparkling wine, a wine with residual sugar. So it's a method that you have a base wine, then you stop the fermentation, you do a tirage of this wine with the same yeast of before, and with the residual sugar of this first fermentation, and you finish the fermentation in bottle. Then you can do a riddling disgorging process if you want to. Some people leave it on crown cap and sell it like this. It's a method that can be very interesting in a hot area where the bricks of the grapes and the alcohol content of the base wine is going to be too high. So in this case, you don't have to add more alcohol. You can just finish your first fermentation and deal with the first initial bricks you have. Traditional methods, that's the most used and the one that's associated with higher quality wine, I would say. So we call it as well method champenoise or metodo classico in Italy. It has been added as a UNESCO heritage in Champagne in 2015. So that's a pretty big deal. How we make it, we have a base wine. Then we are having, we prepare a yeast starter. We add some sugar to do the second fermentation. We add our riddling aids. We add our stabilizers, we add our mouthfeel improvements, we do the tirage, which means we put this base wine, yeast starter, and everything else into a bottle. We do the second fermentation in bottle. We age on lees for a few months or few years. And then there is a riddling process, disgorging process. We add the liqueur d'expédition, which is a time that we can fine-tune the wine and finish, just put our house style, and then you cork the bottle. Next method, transfer method. So the transfer method starts like traditional method until the disgorging process. And when you disgorge the bottle, you actually transfer all this bottle into a tank. The reason of this is going to be to have an homogeneous wine. Then you do your dosage in tank and you fill and cork the bottle. Highly labor intensive and as well the higher cost associated, because you have to change all the bottles, you have to transfer everything to a tank, so you need pressurized equipment as well. Yeah, it's just a way to ensure homogeneous bottles. Last method, charmat method. Italians are pioneers in this method with their Prosecco and Lambrusco. It started with the industrial advancement in the early 20th century. And it's basically trying to simulate the traditional methods, but making the second fermentation in just a bigger bottle, which is a pressurized tank instead of each bottle. So in this case, you have your base wine, you prepare your yeast starter as well, and you do your second fermentation in tank. Then when it's finished, you can do some aging in tank as well. You do your dosage in tank, and then you fill and cork the bottle. So all these methods have some common points and common challenges. So I will focus a little bit more on the traditional method, since it is the most used method and one of the most complex. But as well, we'll talk about charmat, and I'm happy to answer any question you have on all the different methods in the Q&A portion. So if you have to think about one descriptor to use for sparkling wine, what would it be? I'm going to answer this one. It's going to be bubble. Obviously, the most common point is by definition sparkling. So the bubbles are the fact that we have bubbles, and as well the quality of these bubbles will be the most common point in all this style. Bubbles are crucial parameter for quality, since it's going to impact obviously the visual aspect, but not only, it's going to impact as well the aromatic perception with stripping some aromas up, lifting some aromas up, and it's going to have an impact on the mouthfeel. And maybe this, the first thing to give you an example for this is sparkling water. You can all realize that depending the size of the bubble and how the bubble persists, you have different appreciation of sparkling water. Second common point is going to be the grape profile. Obviously, we're making sparkling wine, so we want something that is going to be fresh, crisp, and light, which is defined by the grape maturity. If outside of the ancestral method and carbonation method, everything else has a second fermentation, so you need to not be too high in alcohol and not too ripe in terms of aromatic profile to make sparkling wine. So please change your mindset. It is completely another story than making still wine. We are looking at acidic maturity. We focus on the pH and the acidity of the grapes, and then obviously we don't want green character. We want as well healthy grapes, but we are not looking for very ripe aromas, and we are not looking for bricks, and we are not looking for phenolic maturity either. So pH around 3, usually the bricks are around 20-21, but that's not really the most of the concern. Grape profile, just not green. Then, as you saw, we all start with a base wine, so we have to make a base wine and prepare this base wine to become sparkling, to receive carbonation. And this base wine has to be stable, because obviously you don't want a sparkling wine that will have haze or precipitation of tartrate or even a microbial issue that will not be controlled and could completely ruin the aromatic profile and as well the amount of pressure you have in the bottle. Then the most common challenges that we usually meet are reductive notes. Reduction appear very commonly during the second fermentation because the yeast is struggling. So we are going to see how preparing the yeast and feeding the yeast properly and managing the redox potential can help you dealing with this reductive note. On the other side, the other common issue, and particularly on carbonation method, is a premature aging. So after disgorging, when the wine is held in a tank, or if you don't do any second fermentation in tank, there is very commonly a premature aging happening. So we will talk about this as well, which is how to manage oxidation. So as bubble is our first point, let's talk about how we can make, how bubbles are formed, how we can make good qualitative bubbles. But first, let's talk about how we can measure it, evaluate the quality of this bubble in a consistent and repeatable way. So traditionally or empirically, bubbles were measured by pouring sparkling wine in a glass and observing how the foam looks like. This is highly dependent on temperature, how the glass is clean, how the glass is dried, which type of glass it is, what the shape of the glass, the height of the service, and the observator. So way too many variables to be consistent and repeatable. So in 1990, the University of France worked on this problematic and developed a new equipment which is called the Mousse, as you can see on the picture here. So the Mousse has been developed, and basically it's a cylinder here where we put our wine. We have here a little ceramic, porous ceramic, where we are going to inject gas at a consistent pressure. The wine is going to foam, and there is here laser that can read the height of the foam. So we end up with a graph, as you can see here, which is the foam height. This represents the maximum foam you can produce when you pour the wine into a glass. So sign of quality, it's related to the amount of foam that will persist through time, but as well the amount of the size of the bubbles and the retention of the bubbles. And then we have a plateau here. So this would be the foam retention, or the height of the stability of the foam, which is related to the amount of foam you have when the glass is full and how much foam is maintained. So these two numbers are actually showing the foam quality of a base, so foam capacity and foam quality of a base wine or a sparkling wine. So during all the presentation, I will talk about this foam height and foam retention to explain how any treatment or winemaking processes can impact the foam quality. Then bubbles. How do we make bubbles? How bubbles are formed, and how can we have qualitative bubbles? Bubbles are formed from a nucleation site. As you can see in these two pictures, you need a nucleation site, which is usually present in the glass. It can be a scratch from the glass. It can be as well a piece of fiber left from drying the glass. It can be some dust in the glass, anything that could start the bubble to nucleate. Then this bubble is going to rise to the surface and grow. As it rises, some more gas will go in, and it's going to rise faster and faster until it reach the surface, and at this moment the bubble is going to explode. As you can see in these two glasses, what we are looking at is we want a foam like this, that the bubble, a lot of bubbles that rise and stay at the surface. They don't explode as soon as they touch the surface. Okay. How do we do this? It happened that we have to capture the bubble into the wine and make this the wall of this bubble stronger and more resistant to pressure. and this will happen with tensioactive molecules or amphiphilic molecules, as you can see in this picture. So the CO2 bubble that is apolar will need some amphiphilic molecules to be staying in the solution, which is the wine, which is polar. So we have so these amphiphilic molecules look like this with a polar head that will be soluble into the wine, and an apolar tail, as you can see here, that is hydrophobic, that is soluble into the gas. By making these molecules all around the bubbles, we increase the stability of this bubble. We maintain the CO2 bubble in solution. We limit the stripping. We limit the bubble. We reduce the breakdown of the bubble when it becomes in contact with the surface, because we increase the resistance to the pressure. Okay, so that's how we can maintain a bubble smaller, more slower to rise, and as well stable at the surface. We need amphiphilic molecules, which are in wine manoprotein and glycoprotein. So in wine we have pro-foaming agents, which are these amphiphilic molecules, and we have anti-foaming agents, as you can see here. So the pro-foaming agent, so as I was talking about, is amphiphilic molecule, glycoprotein, manoprotein, colloids, viscosity as well can increase the retention of the bubbles. And some studies show that acidity, higher acidity or lower pH will improve the foaming capacity of the wine. Some study as well show that monomeric anthocyanin can improve the foaming capacity of the wine, so very interesting in rosé. Some amino acids can improve the foaming capacity of the wine, and polysaccharides improve the foam retention. On the other side of the balance, sorry, we have anti-foaming agents, which are lipids and alcohol. Alcohol, a lot of studies are showing the negative impact of the alcohol on foam. It makes less tensioactive surface, so the bubbles doesn't retain as much, and there is more stripping, and as soon as the bubble touches the surface, it breaks down with higher alcohol. In terms of lipids, we know that some lipids, especially the long chain carbon chain lipids, have an anti-foaming effect. The best example I could give you would be when you do your dishes, and if you clean a plate which is very greasy, you will have much less bubbles and much less foam than if you clean a plate that is not as greasy. So lipids have an anti-foam foaming capacity. Okay, so now that we know everything about foam, we are going to try to understand through the entire process from harvest to fine-tuning at dosage, how we can manage the quality of the sparkling wine, obviously in terms of aromas, mouthfeel, but as well quality of the bubbles. So as I was telling you, harvest and preparation of the base wine is the most common, it's the common point and the most important step for all sparkling wine making processes. So harvest, again, think about harvest in terms of sparkling wine. So you want to pick your grapes as they would be unripe if you were making a still wine, but you want to pick your grapes with a fresh, clean, and acidic profile. That's what we focus on. Then the second step that will have a very strong impact on the quality of the sparkling wine is actually the press and the press cycle. Press cycle has a strong impact on juice composition, so juice quality and wine quality later down the road. So segmentation of the press fraction is very important. That's what has been done in champagne, and that's what is done in most of the sparkling wine processes. So usually we are working with whole bunches so we can play with lower pressure and we still have a good draining and a good flow. We use a Kremer style cycle, which means we increase slowly by plateau the pressure until the flow is not very good anymore, and then you can deflate, rotate your press and start again. And the idea is to limit the rotation and limit the extraction of all these negative compounds. So as you can see in this graph, this study has been done in Champagne, but we have the study done as well in Switzerland, Italy, Spain, and we did it in USA too. This study can show how press cycle impacts the foaming capacity. So as you can see here, very important, the first bean juice is actually not qualitative at all. The first juice that comes with the grapes when you harvest the grapes, this juice is actually the washing juice. It's gonna show, this juice is gonna be full of dust and full of wax of the grapes, full of lipids, full of pesticide, full of microorganisms and other residual elements from grape skin. So it's usually associated with bad bubbles, but as well, if you look here, it's associated with more brown character because there is more oxidases, so more oxidation and more turbidity. This juice has a lower foam capacity and a lower quality in terms of organoleptic profile. Then we go through the press and the cuvée. We are increasing the foaming capacity. Look at the color of the juice. They are really nice, crisp, light, fresh. They are high quality. This is something that you want to put on the side and keep. As soon as we have the first rotation of the press, we completely drop the foam height. And you can see on the picture, we have starting to be browner and we have much more sediment. So again, things that the sediment are impacting a lot. They are attached to lipids, they are attached to off aromas, they are attached to microorganisms. So it means lower quality of juice in general. And then it keeps going. Every rotation, we actually have the same effect. And then when you start to be higher press, you start to be completely brown and the foam is staying low anyway. So very important to segment the press fractions and to keep the cuvée or the free run on the side. And then if you can just separate the bean juice and put it with the tie or the press, we can always work on this. As you can see, the first tie is still pretty good quality. So there is a lot of winemaking treatment that can be done, such as different fining agents, that we can work on the ties to actually increase the quality of the tie in terms of phenolic profile, organoleptic profile, and as well increase the foaming capacity to put it back to the cuvée. So all this is actually possible and can be very good to increase your quality of the juice and increase the volume of your juice that you can use. So big work on press fraction and treatment of the different press fraction. So since I talk about treatment, we are talking about fining and clarification. So when do we want to fine? That's a really important question. We want to fine as early as possible. So every fining that we will do on juice will have much less impact on the final quality than if we do it on wine. As you can see on this graph here, we did the same fining on juice and on wine, from the same wine, obviously. And you can see how it impacts the foam height. And you can see that fining on juice, the impact is not so high, but as soon as you fine in wine, you reduce from more than half the foaming height, so the foaming capacity of your base wine. So the question, when to fine? As early as possible. Be proactive. Use bentonite fining agent to stabilize your protein in the juice. Remove your oxidable phenolic compound in the juice. Improve the foaming capacity. Remove your anti-foaming agent in the juice. So you just have to fine-tune the wine part, and the big job has been done in the juice. So why would we fine? So first, to improve the quality of the tie and the press fraction and maybe be able to use them in the cuvée, but as well to remove anti-foaming agents, to improve wine shelf life, to manage oxidation, protein stability, and managing foaming quality. So at Enartis, we developed a fining agent that could answer all these parameters. So we have having Proclair Perlage Proclair BC, which is a blend of bentonite, PVPP, and cellulose. This fining agent is used to stabilize protein, but as well removing some anti-foaming agent, while we maintain the foaming properties and we remove any oxidable or easily oxidable compounds, phenolics. So once your juice is clean and clarified, we are thinking about fermentation. When we talk about base wine, we are talking about a clean fermentation with no H2S, complete, fast and clean, so safe. In terms of aromas, if we talk about carbonation and ancestral method, we might want some more aromatic, and this will be our final yeast. So we want to select a yeast that will resist to pressure and create a nice aromatic profile. When we talk about ancestral, charmat, or transfer method, we are more looking at just clean, complete, low sulfur, low VA, low pH resistance, and no off flavor yeast. So unless obviously we want to do an aromatic style sparkling wine, and we work with aromatic varieties such as Muscat. So at Enartis, we have yeast perlage and perlage fruity that are good for both first and second fermentation. Perlage would be more a traditional style, more neutral, expressing the grape potential. Perlage fruity will produce much more esters and floral character, so fruity and floral character, that will make your wine more aromatic. Then we arrive to the stabilization of this base wine. We are talking about protein, tartaric, and microbial. We have to do it now since it's our last step for stabilizing our wine. So first step is achieving protein stability. We are not looking at the same stability as in still wine, since usually we have the riddling aids and a second fermentation that are going to change. So we are a little bit less strict in terms of protein stability, but we still don't want to have a cloudy wine. So three strategies that are usually used all together. The first one would be to remove these unstable proteins with bentonite or tannins. Think that if we remove the proteins, we reduce the foaming capacity of the wine as well. Then you can reduce the molecular weight of this protein and make them stable, make them in peptides that are stable. For this application, you need an enzyme that has a protease activity. So we have Zym RMP that can be used on grapes because it's an extraction enzyme as well. And it's going to cut all the native proteins present from the grapes in small peptides and improve your protein stability, at least reduce your needs of bentonite. And then the third option is to stabilize the charge of this unstable protein with monoprotein. So this can be done as early as possible. We have Enartis Pro range that is usually used in during fermentation. So again, as early as possible. And it will help with the mouthfeel, it will help with the foam, and it will help with protein stability. When you arrive to the base wine, the only option left now is to use bentonite, but you can actually use bentonite. There is some tricks. Bentonite associated with some other proteins that could improve the foaming properties. So this is a study done from Zamora in 2005, where we did he did some different findings with bentonite. Here in red, you can see that it decreased the foam height and the foam stability. Then we did same treatment of bentonite with animal protein and same treatment of bentonite with vegetal protein, which is our Clair Perlage Uno. As you can see here, the fact that to add animal or vegetal protein improve actually the foam height and the foam stability while we are stabilizing the wine for protein. So Clair Perlage Uno is a product that we have in our portfolio that is the most effective in terms of protein stabilization and maintaining, respecting the foam properties. Otherwise, the tweak would be to use a bentonite associated with a little add of gelatin or a little add of isinglass. Next stability, the tartaric stability. Obviously very important in sparkling wine since we don't want to have any gushing issues. So in addition to not have crystal in the bottle, we might have gushing because a crystal would be a nucleation site. Gushing looks like what you see on your picture here, which means when you have this issue, you have to stop all your disgorging line. You have to, you don't know anymore if your wine is going to be homogeneous from bottle to bottle because the gushing is not going to, the loss of wine is not going to be the same from bottle to bottle, and you lose a lot of wine. So there is everything to lose to have gushing issue. So tartaric stability is very important. One more important point is that we are talking about base wine, but then there is a second fermentation that is going to increase the alcohol content. Tartaric stability is highly dependent of alcohol content. So it's very important to make sure your base wine is stable, but highly stable, I would say. So two different approaches, the subtractive strategies, which is chilling down a tank, electrodialysis or ion exchange resin. This is commonly used and it works, but you stabilize only the base wine. You can't stabilize more than the base wine, so you can stabilize for the 1.5% alcohol addition. And it's highly, there is a high cost associated to it. It's high energy usage, high water usage, labor intensive. It takes time. If you chill down the tank, it can take a few weeks. Then you lose some volume and you can deteriorate, you change at least the quality of the base wine. The other approach is the additive strategy. So this, you are all familiar with it. And if you are not, we have a webinar that you can find on our website that speak about all these strategies. You have manoprotein, Arabic gum, CMC, or most lately KPA, potassium polyaspartate. This approach, so manoprotein, Arabic gum, and CMC works for, I would say, medium instabilities. KPA will work with any instability. The good thing with additive strategies that you can see here is that you can actually test your wine with 1.5% alcohol more and make sure the dosage you choose is gonna achieve stability with 1.5% alcohol more. So we are talking about the last, the final product, the stability of the final product. For the people that are scared about the longevity, just to let you know that CMC has been pushed to be legal by sparkling wine areas in France, and to actually make sure they can reach stability in the final product. And now we have around 12 to 15 years of trials where the wine is still stable. So I think we are pretty sure with this. Arabic gum will improve as well the foaming capacities. Manoprotein gives you a lot of volume and roughness in terms of organoleptic perception. And the Zenith is working with any instability you can find in wine. The only thing is that it's actually not FDA approved yet in USA, but it's in used in Europe. And we have right now 5 years of background on this product. If you have any question, I'm more than happy to answer them on this product later on the Q&A portion, but as well, please watch our webinar on tartaric stability. Last stability would be microbial stability. So since we don't do malolactic fermentation in sparkling wine, we might have some issue with microbial stability, and we really don't want to have a malolactic going on while in the bottle. So for this, the most common thing to do is to filter the wine. It happened that several studies are showing how filtration impacts the foaming capacity, which is logical because filtration removes some colloids, and colloids are responsible for the foaming properties of the base wine. As you can see here, this is a study from Richard Marshall done in 2010 that show how as soon as we decrease the porosity of the filter, we decrease as well the foam height and the foam quality or ability of the base wine. And here we did the same trial internally at Vinquery in USA, and you can see that systematically we reduce the foam height and the foam stability when we filter the wine. So you're going to tell me, great, you don't want any issue with malolactic. You tell me that the filtration impacts the foam. So now what do I do? Should I choose between fermentation or filtration? No, there is some options. There is some treatments you can do to actually kill this bacteria, and that will not kill the yeast. Obviously, you can use lysozyme, but lysozyme will kill lactic acid bacteria, but will require more bentonite because lysozyme is a protein, and this is a really unstable protein. Or you have chitosan. Chitosan is a fining agent that some people use in the yeast starter. So to avoid any contamination of bacteria in the yeast starter, it doesn't impact Saccharomyces. Some people use chitosan in their base wine to make sure there is no bacteria that will develop down the road. And some people just do a fining in the base wine and then rack it off and bottle as it is. So there is all the option possible. Chitosan has actually a positive effect on foaming capacity from our trial that we observe this, and a low dosage of chitosan will be enough to remove contamination of malolactic fermentation. Obviously, what I would highly recommend is to check to make a PCR for bacteria before doing tirage to ensure you don't have any bacteria before doing tirage to ensure you don't have any bacteria remaining in the base wine or in your yeast starter. So now we are ready for the second fermentation. Our base wine is stable and clean. We are going to add to this base wine our riddling agent. That's for just transfer or traditional method. We are going to add the sugar needed to reach the pressure we want. Think that 24 grams per liter of sugar gives you 6 bar of pressure. For the ancestral method, please make sure you don't stop the fermentation if you have more than 24 grams per liter of sugar. Otherwise, it's not 177 feet that your cork will fly, but much more, and you might make little bombs. And so the sugar, the base wine, the riddling aids, the stabilizer, some nutrients for the yeast, and then we are going to prepare the yeast starter. Make sure you make a really healthy yeast starter that we add into the base wine, and we are ready to do the tirage. So why yeast starter is important? Because we are talking about extreme condition for the yeast. We have alcohol, we have high acidity, we have sulfur, we have high CO2 that have a strong negative impact on the yeast development. We have no nutrients, no oxygen, there is pressure, and there is not so much sugar to ferment. So this is extreme for the yeast. This is going to be very hard to make sure the yeast finish without stressing too much, so without developing too many reductive nodes of flavor. So we want to make sure this yeast is in really healthy condition with a high enough population, because as soon as you put them in with the pressure, they can't make more yeast cells, and that there is no inhibiting factor into the wine outside of the alcohol, the acidity, and the sulfur. So use a yeast that has been developed for sparkling wine. At Enartis, we have the perlage, which is more for traditional style. We are talking more about complex, yeasty, elegant, and more aged sparkling wine style. Then perlage fruity for developing more fruity character. This is very commonly used in charmat method. And perlage DOCG that as well will give you some more fruity character. This one is used for as well red wine, red sparkling wine. Yeast can have an impact on the foam. As you can see in this graph here, when we compare perlage to a standard champagne yeast commonly used, you can see that the foam is always improved. So very important to consider the foam as well with the yeast. And when you prepare your starter, you have to make sure you have usually 3 to 5% of the base wine, of the volume of the base wine will be your yeast starter. You want to have more than 2 millions of viable cells per milliliters and 85% viability minimum. I can help you with preparing yeast starter if you want to, but that's very important to have the right yeast to check the number of cells, to check the viability, and then to make sure these yeast are healthy. How do you do this? You use nutrients and oxygen. So we have 2 types of nutrients that we will add at 2 different times. Pure amino acids nutrients, that this goes into the yeast starter, the pied de cuve, when the yeast is actually comfortable, not stressed, and can assimilate all these amino acids, store them in the vacuole, make strong yeast cells, and then use them later down the road. So we are talking about Nutriferm PDC or Nutriferm PDC Arome that has a little extra amino acids that will help you produce more aromatic compounds. So usually traditional style use Nutriferm PDC, fruity style you use PDC Arome. Then you have to think that this yeast, now that is in a good amount of cells and healthy, still have to ferment a little bit of sugar. So it can be a good idea to use some survival factor and some nutrients to help the yeast finishing this fermentation without struggling and developing H2S. So for this, we have 2 different nutrients that we add to the base wine, which would be Nutriferm Tirage or Nutriferm Revel Arome that has some copper salts helping preventing the formation of H2S. When we talk about charmat method or still wine fermentation, we have a product that is Nutriferm Gradual Release that is very, very interesting on this process because it's actually a bag that changes porosity with contact time with the wine and alcohol content. So this bag is going to change porosity and release its content, which is DAP or yeast nutrients. It's releasing its content slowly as the yeast needs it. So you feed the yeast at its needs. You don't give like a big spike of nutrients that makes the yeast crazy with a big heat wave and a big stress later down the road. You feed it as it needs. You prevent H2S formation. You prevent stress. And as well, in a practical aspect, you just add the bag into your base wine and let it go. You close your tank and you don't need to touch your tank anymore. So that's very, very used in charmat method and as well in still wine fermentation. If you want more information in the Nutriferm Gradual Release, you can find them in the downloadable file, but as well, I'm happy to send you some more. Next step at tirage, you can improve the mouthfeel of the wine. You can improve the resistance to oxidation with some tannins or some manoprotein. You can improve the foaming capacity. This is usually done with manoproteins. Certainly mousse is very good at this. We work on the wine structure. You can fine-tune some wine aromas and stabilize the redox potential. Very commonly used TAN-TRG, which is a tannin that will help you maintaining the redox potential stable and avoiding any reduced nut production. So it's a tannin from grape and oak origin. So as soon as you are ready, you did a tirage, you have your second fermentation going on. You usually check it with any afrometer. That's a very useful tool to understand the pressure and how the fermentation is going. And then you have the step of the dosage, where you can do more or less whatever you want until you use soluble and stable things. So that's where you can play with spirits, you can play with different wine, aged wine, you can play with water, partially fermented juice, grape juice, and sugar to give a style to your wine, to have the house style, or change completely, make a new cuvée from the same base wine. As well, it's where you are going to add sulfur to protect your wine against premature aging and oxidation. That's where ascorbic acid, citric acid is very commonly used as well to give some freshness. Tannins, arabic gum, mainly for the mouthfeel and the foaming capacity, and manoprotein, but play with manoprotein that are completely soluble. So we are looking at making some bench trial with doing some dosage and last touch adjustment. I think that this is very fast and very useful to do. So when you are at the dosage stage, please call us. We will send you a tannin kit, or we can come with our kit. We will open a bottle until that is finishing fermentation, and we will do some tannin and polysaccharide trials. So the cool thing with this is that you can reduce green character, you can remove reductive notes, you can improve antioxidant protection, or even reduce your sulfur dosage by using a tannin such as tan SLI as an antioxidant protection. You improve wine shelf life, you can balance mouthfeel. This is mainly with tannins to give some structure and manoprotein to give some roundness. Improve structure, you can stabilize color. This is as well if you have rosé wine that you want to make sure you stabilize the color, or you adjust the color at the end. You definitely want to use Arabic gum such as maxi gum that is developed to stabilize color, so you avoid the loss of color and the precipitation. You can fine-tune aromatics, you keep consistency through years in your house style, but as well you can create a complete new profile. So that's very, very powerful tool and very interesting, and I will be very happy to send you sample if you want to. So here are some references that I use. I apologize because a lot of them are in French, since French references are still the one I use the most, but I'm happy to send you more if you have more questions about it. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for this webinar, and I will be now ready to answer any question you have about sparkling wine. So feel free to contact me as well to this email address that you can find here. And just as a note, we have a craft winemaking series that will happen during the month of June, where we cover all the bases of winemaking. So you are more than welcome to participate to this series as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and now let's open the chat and look at the question and answer portion. Thank you very much.